What's up, y'all? Danny here with Brooke, another Confidently Flawed podcast episode. And today we wanted to share with you, facts about sugar, but not what you might think. Normally we've gone on here and we've discussed sugar and how it can be bad and this and that and all the ramifications of eating sugar. Well, what we don't always talk about is there's actually good sugar too. What's the discuss like we always hear you need to shy away from sugar, but that's not always the case, right, Brooke? So there's different kinds of sugar, and some might be good and some might be bad. And it doesn't necessarily mean, from our point of view, that you necessarily have to avoid sugar completely. It just might be, you just have to go about it a certain way. So, Brooke, when it comes to sugar, what are your thoughts on sugar? Like, what's good sugar? What's bad sugar? What should people kind of, consider when it comes to their sugar intake?
Yeah, I think sugar, it's very interesting because I don't want to come on here and like basically tell everybody to go be eating all the sugar because at the end of the day, like, yes, too much sugar can be an issue, especially dependent on the person, and dependent on where you come from. Females have a lot bigger of an issue with sugar issues because a lot of females are insulin resistant, and so they have sugar issues. And without really going into all of that, I do believe that sugar is a little bit too demonized because sugar isn't all bad for you. And the sugars that are good for you are actually really, really good for you when you're eating them in the right way at the right times. And the bad sugars, yes, is what's bad for you. But I think when we talk about sugar, we can't lump all sugar as bad because there is good sugar. So we could go and be super scientific and break down like fructose, glucose, all of that, blah, 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 blah. But I think that we should just really kind of keep this surface level and basic because at the end of the day, like it's really easy to figure out what's good and bad for you. And that's basically just figuring out what is real and natural and what is fake or man made. Good sugars, the best way that I like to think of them as is something that really truly has not been altered. And that is going to be your fruits, right? Fruits are grown outside. Fruits are grown and they are natural. That is a natural form of sugar. Yes, some fruits have more sugars than others. And that is why it is recommended to eat a little bit more low sugar fruits, which would be like your berries, where like higher sugar fruits would include things like cantaloupe, bananas, watermelon. That's got a lot of sugar in it. But at the end of the day, that sugar is still going to be better for you than, the granulated sugar that you're going to use to bake a donut or to bake a cake or something like that. Another sugar that I think is so incredibly beneficial that I think falls through the cracks way too much is honey. I think honey is so incredibly good for you, especially if you get raw honey from a local farmer in your local area. Raw honey actually not only has incredible enzymes and probiotics that helps your gut, it's also really good for your allergies because seasonal local honey will actually give you a little bit, a small amount of like the pollination that's happening in the flowers and in the agriculture, or sorry, in the grasses and the trees and things like that that you are struggling with your allergies. So local raw honey is also a really, really good source of sugar that's healthy for you, that doesn't react so strongly in the body because it's natural. And when you think about why natural works better than why artificial, I always like to go back to our ancestors. I always like to go back to what our ancestors ate. And our ancestors, way back when, didn't know what artificial sugars were, didn't know what these man made sugars were. All they knew were the berries and the honey, again, that came from the bees, or the berries, or the maple syrup in many ways. Maple syrup is kind of along the lines, not as healthy for you as honey, but if you get local maple syrup without any of the added stuff, like not saying go get your Aunt Jemima maple syrup from the grocery store, that is artificial. That's got high fructose corn syrup, which is a horrible sugar for you. But on the other hand, thinking of what our ancestors did and what they ate, that's what your bodies are designed, and that's how we really truly were created to consume is the anything that's natural. Our bodies aren't meant to have the artificial stuff. And so if you're trying to decipher what's going to be good, what's going to be bad, first think of what's natural. What is coming from natural sources? Again, your fruits, your honey, again, maple syrup if it's natural. And I that's why I always am a little hard on saying maple syrup because a lot of maple syrup is not natural. A lot of maple syrup, you turn around the jar and you've got a bunch of other add-ons in it. If you have a way to get pure local maple syrup, pure local raw honey, that is your route to go. And if you're listening to this wondering, well, where the heck do I get that? This is all legal. Like, it's not like it's illegal. When I say raw honey, sometimes people are like, oh, raw, like we don't want raw. I promise you that basically just means it's literally just honey. There's nothing else to it. And where you get this is from local farmers, especially here in Michigan. Just go to a local farmers market or go to, a local, store that has, local produce. They probably are selling local honey, local maple syrup. Or if you know of a farmer that you have connections with, that's where I get my maple syrup and my honey is from a local farmer. So that's your options. Where on the other hand, the sugar is to stay away from anything that just gives you the ick in the sense of like, this is not natural. Again, high fructose corn syrup, that is not natural. Granulated sugar, powdered sugar, like all of that is not natural. Any of your artificial sweeteners, my friends, like that's also not natural either. The sugar replacements that are not sugar, but they taste like sugar, that's not natural. Again, thinking about that, something that's supposed to taste like something that it really isn't, that's not good for you either. And that's why sugar, I believe, is getting so demonized, is because, yes, the bad sugar is bad, but we need sugar. And the last thing I kind of want to touch on before passing over to you, Danny, is what a lot of people don't realize is guess what is sugar? Carbs. Any carb that you consume is a sugar. And so you are consuming sugar all the time. And so some people are like, well, I don't want to eat berries because it's got sugar, or I don't want to eat honey because it's got sugar and I'm not supposed to eat sugar. Then I guess my answer is going to be like, well, what about your toast that you had for breakfast? Or what about that sweet potato that you had with your dinner? What about that rice? Like, yes, the sugars might be different, but carbs turn to sugar in the body. That's kind of what a carb is. So I prefer, if you're going to eat the sugars, to eat the natural, the actual source. Yes, sweet potatoes are going to be a better sugar for you than a piece of bread because a piece of bread has multiple ingredients. A sweet potato is literally just a sweet potato, unless it's genetically modified, which that's a whole different story. But that's my reminder for all of you guys, is to just try to eat the whole food and not be afraid of sugar. Like I consume sugar every day. I put like I love honey, like love honey. I put honey in my coffee for my sweetener. I can drink black coffee and I'm not even really a coffee person. I just love the taste of it. So I'll even do decaf, but I like black coffee, but there's just something about that honey in the coffee that just gives me that little bit of sweetness. And I'll do it in the morning, obviously with the coffee, but because that's going to just give me a little bit of extra energy. Because again, it's a carb, it's just going to fuel my body a little bit, but I'm also getting health benefits from that honey or from those berries that I'm eating versus the artificial stuff. So, what's your thoughts on all this, Danny?
Yeah, I agree. And I love that you broke down that really all carbs are sugar in some form, right? Like when it comes into the body, it breaks down as sugar so it can be utilized. Like that's how your body assimilates and utilizes sugar or carbs. But it is also important to note that there is good and bad sugars, like you said. And I think the disconnect or the difference between the two of real healthy or sugar versus fake, either fake sugar or sugar that is, synthetic, if you will, is the nutrient factors. The real sugar stuff in fruit comes with phytonutrients, comes with fiber, comes with vitamins, comes with minerals, right? It comes with all these different things and enzymes. So your body knows what it is and how to utilize it. So it's not as detrimental. And as long as you're living a relatively healthy lifestyle and you're eating protein with your meals and you're exercising and utilizing that sugar in your body, like the sugar in fruit is not really going to be detrimental to you whatsoever. However, if we are eating all of this granulated sugar and things like that, and it's not coming with the other nutrients, enzymes, and fiber and things of that nature, that's when you run into trouble. And that's when you get big spikes in blood sugar, which we've talked about numerous times on this podcast, is some of the most unhealthiest problems that people have stem from high and low blood sugar issues, whether that's mood, whether that's, obviously blood sugar issues, weight gain, right? Like all these different things can stem from issues in blood sugar regulation, and a lot of the times that's going to come from high sugar and or carbs, because it's the same thing in relation to the other nutrients and fiber or lack thereof that they're getting. So when it comes to choosing the right types of sugars, because your body needs sugar, especially if you're a critical thinker, meaning you have a lot of stress, or you do critical thinking, or you have a job or a position at work that you have to think critically a lot or make a lot of high decisions, is your brain needs sugar in order to do all that. So if you tend to go low sugar or low carb or things like that, you're going to be missing out on a lot of key nutrients, and your brain's not going to be able to function like it should, and your performance in the workouts and gym is not going to be high. So sugar is good, just do it in the right way. Do it around your workouts if possible. Do it earlier in the day. Always do it, have protein surrounding that sugar, and then choose natural sugars in their natural state, because they're going to come with the other nutrients that are needed, and then your body recognizes so it can actually utilize it, versus the fake sugar or or the sugar without all the other nutrients and things like that. And I think if you do that, then you can actually say sugar is actually okay for you.
Oh, absolutely. I think I just want to reiterate the nutrients, the phytonutrients, the enzymes, the minerals, all of that we get from these foods. And I think that's what a lot of people forget is food is fuel. Like food is what is going to fuel us. Now, yes, things have changed in the last decades. We've talked about it a couple of times on the show. Like the foods that we are eating is not giving us the same amount of nutrients it gave 10, 20, 30 years ago, but it still is fueling us. It still is giving us those nutrients. And so don't fear that food. Like, don't think sugar is bad. Oh my gosh, I can't have fruit. Especially when it's seasonal, especially when it's fresh and it's healthy. That's when it's going to be the healthiest for you. But if you are someone who is feeling like sugar is bringing you down, which most people it does, most people, like one of the biggest, like the most growing issues that so many people are having is insulin resistance issues and high blood sugar and blood sugar regulation issues. And if you're someone who feels like you get that crash or feels like you have cravings or anything like that, it's typically a sugar issue. So I would recommend trying to stay away from those bad sugars, trying to stay away from anything that's natural while also not fearing the good sugars. So, do you have anything else to add? Okay. So, hope you got some information from this episode. I know summer is just about approaching, so the sugars tend to be higher. So, be mindful of those sugars, but don't fear those sugars. And that's what we're here to share with you and to just let you in on that secret sauce of you don't have to fear sugar, you just have to be mindful of it. So, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another episode of Confidently Flawed.